Hi, I am Nora Bennett, and I'm unraveling under the weight of my father's words. The foggy air of Cape Elizabeth, Maine, chokes me as I stand in my parents' backyard. The ocean's roar drowning out the party's cheer. My heart slams against my ribs as Dad raises his glass, his voice booming, "To Sophie, our star, and Nora, my oops baby, who somehow made it." Laughter slices through the chilly night, each chuckle a dagger. My face burns, my hands shake. Am I just their joke? The fairy lights blur as I stumble toward the darkness, my feet betraying me before I can scream. Hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Now, let's continue with the story. The gravel crunched under my sneakers as I hurried past the weathered fence, the party's glow fading into the mist. My parents' seaside home in Cape Elizabeth, with its gray shingles and sprawling porch, was the kind of place locals called picture perfect. Tonight, it was a trap, its warmth a lie. Sophie's engagement party buzzed behind me. Lobster rolls stacked on red checkered tablecloths, a local band's fiddle humming through the air, neighbors toasting with craft beers. Everyone was swept up in my younger sister's moment, her ring sparkling like a beacon. And me? I was Nora, the 26-year-old middle child, the one who never quite belonged. I'd spent the afternoon faking smiles, dodging questions about my life. "Still doing that art thing, Nora?" they'd ask. Already glancing at Sophie or my older brother Liam, the lawyer who could do no wrong. I'd mutter about my graphic design job with a Portland firm, but it never felt like enough, not next to Sophie's nursing gigs or Liam's courtroom wins. And Dad, Daniel Bennett, who built this town's fanciest homes, made sure I knew it. His construction company was his kingdom, and I was the accident that didn't fit his blueprint. An oops baby, he'd called me, right there under the string lights. His toast replayed in my mind, each word a fresh wound. I could see their faces. Old Mrs. Sullivan chuckling softly, Sophie laughing with her fiancé, Mom Clara with her tight-lipped smile, like it was just another day. Even Liam, always so serious, had smirked. Did they all agree? Did they all think I was a mistake? My chest constricted, and I gulped the damp, salty air. The lighthouse beam cut through the fog, faint and far. I wanted to storm back, to yell at Dad, to make them see me. But my legs carried me toward my car, parked beneath a twisted pine. I'd always been the odd one out. When I was 12, I'd spent hours sketching the Portland headlight, proud of the way I'd caught the waves crashing. I showed Dad, hoping for once he'd be impressed. He'd flicked his eyes over it and said, "Nice, Nora, but it's a hobby, not a career. Look at Liam. Liam got the scholarships, Sophie got the cuddles, and I got nothing." I'd kept trying, pouring my soul into my designs, thinking if I was good enough, Dad would notice. But tonight, he'd put it all out there. I was a fluke and everyone laughed. Even Mom, who always smoothed things over, hadn't said a word. I reached my Subaru, the one I'd bought with my own money despite Dad's generous offers, always with a catch. My fingers shook as I dug for my keys. The party's chatter floated on the breeze, mocking me. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather cold against my jeans, and gripped the wheel until my hands ached. I didn't cry. Not yet. But the weight of it all, years of being invisible, of begging for scraps of approval, crushed me like the fog pressing against the windows. I started the engine, its rumble slicing the quiet. My phone buzzed in my purse, probably Sophie or Mom, wondering where I'd vanished to. I didn't check. I didn't owe them anything, not after that. As I pulled onto the coastal road, my headlights barely cut through the mist, and I felt a strange mix of fury and freedom. Fury at Dad for turning me into a joke, freedom from staying, from pretending I was okay. But where was I headed? My Portland apartment was just a place to crash, not a refuge. Could I keep living like this, tied to a family that didn't see me? The road hugged the shore, waves pounding below like they were urging me on. I thought of Maya, my coworker, who'd probably tell me to set it all on fire with her usual spark. Or Evan, my old friend who ran the cafe, who always had a way of making me feel heard. Maybe they'd get it. Maybe they'd see the Nora I was trying to be, not the oops baby Dad had named me. As the lighthouse slipped from my rearview mirror, I made a quiet vow. I was done fading into the background. Whatever came next, fighting back or walking away. I do it for me. The fog wrapped around my Subaru like a shroud as I drove along the coastal road. The Atlantic's waves a faint roar below the cliffs of Cape Elizabeth. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as if holding on could keep my heart from splintering. Dad's voice still echoed in my head. Nora, my oops baby. And the laughter that followed, sharp as broken glass, cut deeper with every mile. The lighthouse beam swept through the mist, a ghostly pulse that barely lit the way. I was running, but to what? My apartment in Portland was just a place to sleep, not a home. Not like the house I'd just fled with its warm lights and cruel jokes. The road twisted, and my mind did too, pulling me back to childhood. I was 10, sketching the rocky shore in my notebook, proud of the way I'd captured the foam curling over the stones. I'd shown it to Dad, my heart pounding with hope. He'd glanced at it, his coffee mug steaming, and said, "Cute, Nora, but it's not a real job. Focus on something practical like Liam." Liam, my older brother, was already the golden son, acing math and winning debate trophies. Sophie, barely 5, would toddle in with her dimpled smile, and Dad would scoop her up, calling her his little star. Me? I was the kid who came too soon, the surprise that threw off his perfect plan. I blinked hard, pushing the memory away. The fog thickened, blurring the road's edges, and my headlights caught a deer darting across, forcing me to swerve. My heart lurched, adrenaline spiking. I pulled over onto the gravel shoulder, my breath shaky. The ocean's rhythm filled the silence, steady where I wasn't. I'd spent years chasing Dad's approval, thinking if I worked harder, designed better, I'd be enough. But tonight, at Sophie's engagement party, he'd made it clear I was a mistake, and everyone laughed. Even Mom, with her polite smile, hadn't stopped him. Even Sophie, my little sister, had giggled like it was nothing. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, the screen lighting up with Sophie's name. I ignored it. Another buzz. Liam, this time. I didn't need to read their text to know what they'd say. "Why'd you leave, Nora?" "It was just a joke." My chest tightened and I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, the cold leather grounding me. I wasn't ready to face them, to explain why Dad's words had shattered something I'd been holding together for years. The phone buzzed again, insistent, and I grabbed it, ready to silence it. But it was Maya, my coworker. Her name a small lifeline in the dark. "Nora, you okay?" Maya's voice crackled through the speaker, sharp and warm, like she'd already guessed something was wrong. I exhaled, the sound ragged. "Not really," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "My dad he called me his oops baby at Sophie's party, in front of everyone." Maya let out a low whistle, the kind she used when she was about to go off. "What a jerk move. You still there? Or did you bolt?" I managed a weak laugh. "Bolted. I'm on Route 77 trying not to crash into the ocean." She didn't laugh back. "Listen, Nora, you don't owe them anything, not after that. You want me to come over? I've got wine and a playlist that'll drown out the family drama." I smiled despite myself, picturing Maya's tiny apartment, all fairy lights and chaotic energy. "Maybe tomorrow," I said. "I just need to figure this out." Maya's voice softened. "You will. You're tougher than you think, Bennett. Call me if you need to burn something down." I hung up, her words lingering like a spark. Burn it down. Part of me wanted to. Metaphorically, at least, but what did that even mean? Confront Dad? Cut them all off? The fog pressed closer, and I started driving again, the road a blur of gray and black. I didn't have answers, but for the first time I felt like I didn't need their permission to find them. Back in Portland, my apartment was a shoebox on the edge of the arts district, all creaky floors and mismatched furniture. I dropped my purse on the couch, the silence heavy after the party's noise. My phone glowed with notifications. 3 texts from Sophie, 2 from Liam, and a voicemail from Dad. I ignored them, kicking off my sneakers and sinking into the couch. The city hummed outside, distant horns, a dog barking, but it felt a world away from Cape Elizabeth's polished charm. I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the image of Dad's smirk, the crowd's laughter, Mom's passive smile. But it was no use. The hurt was a tide, pulling me under. I grabbed my sketchbook from the coffee table, flipping to a half-finished drawing of Two Lights State Park, its cliffs jagged against the sea. Art had always been my escape, The one place I could be Nora. Not the middle child or the mistake. But even that felt tainted now. Dad's voice crept in. Cute, but not practical. I tossed the sketchbook aside, my hands shaking. Was I really going to let him define me forever? The thought made my stomach churn, but so did the idea of going back, pretending everything was fine. I wasn't sure which scared me more. Sleep didn't come easy that night. By morning, my phone was a battlefield. Sophie's texts started soft. Nora, where'd you go? I'm worried, but turned sharp. You can't just walk out like that. It's my engagement party. Liam's were worse, all lawyerly condescension. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Call Dad. Dad's voicemail was a low blow. His voice clipped like he was scolding a kid. Nora, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is ridiculous. You embarrassed us all. Call me back. I deleted it, my jaw tight. Embarrass them? He'd stood there, glass raised, and made me the punchline in front of half the town. And they were mad at me? I needed air, or at least coffee, so I headed to Carter's Cafe, Evan's place on Congress Street. The bell jingled as I walked in, the smell of roasted beans and fresh scones wrapping around me like a hug. Evan was behind the counter, his flannel sleeves rolled up, his dark hair falling into his eyes as he poured a latte. We'd been friends since high school, when we'd sneak onto the beach to skip rocks and dream about escaping this town. He looked up, his smile fading when he saw my face. Rough night, he asked, sliding a black coffee my way before I could order. I slumped into a stool at the counter, the cafe's warmth a contrast to the cold knot in my chest. You could say that, I muttered, wrapping my hands around the mug. Evan leaned forward, his voice low. Want to talk about it? I'm a good listener, you know. I hesitated, then spilled it all. Dad's toast, the laughter, my escape into the fog. Evan listened, his eyes steady, not interrupting even when I rambled about how Sophie laughed and Mom did nothing. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. That's messed up, Nora. Your dad's got no right to make you feel like that. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. I don't know what to do, Evan. They're acting like I'm the problem, like I should just laugh it off. He shook his head, wiping the counter absently. You don't have to play their game. You're not the mistake, Nora. You never were. His words hit harder than I expected, and I looked away, my throat tight. Evan had always seen me, even when I felt invisible. In high school, he'd been the one to find me sketching behind the bleachers, the one who'd said my art was something special. Now, here he was, seeing me again. My phone buzzed again, Sophie asking why I was being so dramatic. I turned it face down, anger flaring. Evan noticed, his brow furrowing. They're not going to stop, are they? He asked. I shook my head. Nope, and I'm not sure I want to answer. He nodded like he understood more than I'd said. You don't have to decide now, just don't let them make you feel small, okay? I managed a small smile, his words a flicker of light in the storm. As I left the cafe, the Portland streets were waking up, artists setting up easels, tourists snapping photos of the cobblestones. I walked toward my apartment, the weight of last night still heavy, but different now. Evan's belief in me, Maya's fiery support, they were reminders I wasn't alone. But the texts kept coming, each one a jab. Sophie's latest. Dad's upset, Nora. You need to fix this. Fix what? His cruelty? Her blindness? I stopped on the sidewalk, the harbor breeze cool against my face. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing. I was done apologizing for being me. The wind whipped my hair as I walked along the rocky beach of Cape Elizabeth, the Atlantic's waves crashing with a rhythm that felt angrier than soothing. It was a gray Sunday morning, a week after I'd fled Sophie's engagement party, and my phone hadn't stopped buzzing since. Dad's voicemails, Sophie's texts, Liam's lectures. They were a chorus of blame, each one saying I'd overreacted, that I'd ruined everything. I kicked a pebble into the surf, my sneakers sinking into the damp sand. I wasn't sure what hurt more, their words, or the fact that none of them seemed to care why I'd left. To them, I was still Nora Bennett, the oversensitive middle child, not the woman Dad had humiliated in front of half the town. I'd been avoiding Portland, sticking close to my apartment or this stretch of shore where I could think. The fog had lifted since that night, but my head felt just as cloudy. I kept replaying Dad's toast. Nora, my oops baby, and the laughter that followed, like I was some kind of joke they'd all agreed on. Mom's silence stung worst of all. Clara Bennett, the librarian who could charm anyone with her soft voice, hadn't said a word to defend me. I wanted to scream at her, to ask why she always chose peace over me. But I hadn't called her back, hadn't answered anyone, not yet. A seagull screeched overhead, pulling me out of my thoughts. I noticed an older woman walking toward me, her silver hair tucked under a knit cap. It was Grace Sullivan, my parents' neighbor, the retired teacher who'd always had a kind word when I was a kid. She carried a canvas bag, probably collecting shells or driftwood like she used to. "Nora Bennett," she called, her voice warm but sharp like she could see right through me. "You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders." I managed a half smile, shoving my hands into my jacket pockets. "Just needed some air. Mrs. Sullivan?" She stopped beside me, her eyes crinkling. "Call me Grace, and don't give me that air nonsense. I saw you leave that party last week. Looked like you were running from a fire." I froze, my stomach twisting. Had she heard Dad's toast? Did she laugh too? But her expression was gentle, not judging, and I found myself nodding. "Something like that," I mumbled. Grace gestured to a weathered bench overlooking the sea, and we sat. The wood was cold, splintered from years of salt and wind. "Want to tell me what happened?" she asked, her voice like a door left open, not forcing me through. I hesitated, then let it spill. Dad's cruel joke, the crowd's laughter, how Sophie and Liam acted like it was nothing. Grace listened, her face still, only nodding when I mentioned Mom's silence. When I finished, my voice was raw, and I stared at the waves, waiting for her to say I was being dramatic like everyone else. Instead, she sighed, pulling a smooth stone from her bag and turning it in her hands. "When I was your age, my father called me a disappointment because I chose teaching over a real career like my brother's," she said. He'd say it casually, like it was a fact. Took me years to see it wasn't about me. It was about his own fears. I looked at her surprised. Grace, with her quiet strength, had felt invisible too. "How'd you deal with it?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. She smiled, but it was tinged with something heavy. "I stopped trying to prove him wrong. Started living for me, not his approval. It's hard, Nora, but you're allowed to choose yourself." Her words hit like a wave, steady and undeniable. I thought of my sketchbook, my designs, the parts of me I'd hidden to please Dad. Could I really choose them instead? My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mom, this time a text. "Nora, please call your father. We're worried and he's upset." I stared at the screen, anger flaring. Upset? He was upset? Grace noticed, her eyes narrowing. "Family's complicated," she said. "But don't let them make you feel small to keep their world tidy." I nodded, clutching the phone. "I don't know how to face them," I admitted. She patted my hand, her skin cool and papery. "You'll figure it out. Start with what's true for you." As she stood to leave, she handed me the stone, smooth as glass. "For courage," she said, and walked off, her figure fading into the mist. Back at my apartment, I set the stone on my coffee table next to my sketchbook. Grace's story lingered, a spark in the dark. I opened the sketchbook, tracing the lines of a half-finished lighthouse. Art had always been my truth, even when Dad called it a hobby. Maybe it was time to stop hiding it. I grabbed a pen and started journaling, scribbling my anger, my hurt, the way Dad's words had carved into me. It wasn't much, but it felt like a start. Like I was finally speaking, even if just to myself. The next day at my desk in Portland, I was tweaking a logo for a client when Maya burst into our shared office, her energy like a storm. "Nora, you look like you haven't slept in a week," she said, tossing her bag onto a chair. I shrugged, focusing on my screen. "Family drama," I muttered. Maya raised an eyebrow, leaning against my desk. "Spill. Is this about that party you ditched?" I sighed, then told her everything. Dad's toast, my escape, the text piling up. Her eyes widened when I got to the oops baby part. "That's cold," she said, shaking her head. "Your dad's got some nerve." Maya pulled up a chair, her voice dropping. "You know, I was poking around online. Don't ask why. And your dad's company? Not as solid as he thinks. Some permits for his new condos look sketchy. Like, really sketchy." I frowned, my pulse quickening. What do you mean? She grinned, mischievous. Let's just say I know a journalist who'd love a tip about Daniel Bennett cutting corners. You in? I hesitated, Grace's words echoing. Choose yourself. Leaking something about Dad's business felt dangerous, but it also felt like justice. Maybe, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Send me what you've got. That night, I read Maya's email, a list of permit violations and unpaid subcontractors. It wasn't huge, but it was enough to make Dad sweat. I forwarded it to her journalist friend, my finger hovering over send before I clicked. My heart raced, a mix of guilt and power. I wasn't trying to destroy him, just show him I wasn't invisible. The next morning, a local blog posted a blurb about concerns with Bennett construction. Nothing big, but enough to ripple through Cape Elizabeth's gossip mill. I watched my phone, waiting for Dad's reaction, but it was Liam who texted first. What's wrong with you, Nora? Dad's stressed enough without you stirring crap up. I stared at the message, my stomach sinking. Liam, the perfect son, always had Dad's back. But his words revealed something new, a crack in his armor. Was he stressed too? Did he resent Dad's expectations like I did? I didn't reply, but the thought lingered. Meanwhile, my work email pinged with feedback on my logo design. Stunning, Nora. We want more like this. I smiled, a rare flicker of pride. My art, the thing Dad dismissed, was finally being seen. At lunch, I met Maya at a food truck by the harbor, the air thick with fried clam grease. You did it, didn't you? She said, smirking. I nodded, uneasy. Feels weird, like I'm fighting dirty. She shrugged, biting into a lobster roll. He started it. You're just playing the game. Back at my apartment, I sketched, the lighthouse taking shape with bolder lines. Grace's stone sat nearby, a quiet reminder. I was choosing myself, but at what cost? My phone buzzed again. Sophie this time. Nora, Dad's freaking out. Can we talk? Her tone was softer, almost pleading. And for a moment I saw the kid's sister who used to braid my hair. But she'd laughed at Dad's joke, hadn't she? I set the phone down, my resolve hardening. I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. But as I drew, I felt a shift. Like I was building something new, something that was mine. The ripples from that blog post grew louder by the week. At Carter's Cafe, Evan poured me a coffee, his eyes curious. Heard your dad's catching heat about some permits, he said, wiping the counter. I froze, my mug halfway to my lips. Yeah, small town, big mouths, I said, dodging. Evan raised an eyebrow but didn't push. You holding up okay? He asked instead, his voice soft. I nodded, but my guilt gnawed. Had I gone too far? The cafe's bell jingled, and a regular mentioned trouble at Bennett Construction, loud enough for me to hear. I sank lower in my seat, the weight of my choice settling in. That afternoon, I walked the beach again, hoping for clarity. The tide was low, exposing jagged rocks slick with seaweed. I thought of Grace, her story about choosing herself, but choosing myself felt messy, like I was tearing down more than I'd meant to. My phone buzzed. Mom again. Nora, this has gone far enough. Call your father. I deleted it, anger flaring. Why was it always on me to fix things? But Liam's text stuck with me, his stress a mirror to my own. Maybe he wasn't as perfect as I'd thought. Maybe none of us were. At work, my design project was picking up steam. My boss called it game-changing, and I felt a rush of possibility. I sketched late into the night, my lighthouse now a beacon in a storm. Maya texted, her journalist friend sniffing more dirt on Dad's company. You want to keep going? She asked. I stared at the message, torn. Part of me wanted to stop, to let Dad's stress be enough. But another part, the part that remembered his smirk, the crowd's laughter, wanted him to feel what I'd felt. I typed back, keep digging. As I hit send, I wondered who I was becoming, and if I'd like her when this was over. The salt-streaked air of Cape Elizabeth stung my cheeks as I stood outside my Portland apartment, my breath visible in the chilly dusk. It was 2 weeks after Sophie's engagement party, and the world felt like it was closing in. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Sophie's pleas, Liam's lectures, and Dad's voicemails, each one sharper than the last. I'd stirred the pot with that leaked permit tip, and now the ripples were hitting shore. Bennett Construction was the talk of the town, and not in a good way. I should have felt powerful, but my stomach churned with guilt and defiance, a storm I couldn't calm. Then I heard footsteps, heavy, uneven, and looked up to see Dad, Daniel Bennett, on my doorstep, his face a mix of rage and ruin. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his flannel shirt wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. "Nora," he said, his voice low like he was holding back a shout. "We need to talk." My heart slammed against my ribs, but I squared my shoulders, gripping the doorframe. "I don't have anything to say," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. He stepped closer, his work boots scuffing the pavement. "You think you can just tear everything down? My business, my reputation? You're playing a dangerous game, kid." His words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. "You started it," I shot back. "You called me a mistake in front of everyone. You don't get to play victim now." Dad's jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw something flicker in his eyes. Anger, yes, but also fear. "You don't understand what you've done," he said, his voice dropping. "Clients are pulling out. People are talking. You think this is just about you?" I laughed, bitter and sharp. "It's always been about you, Dad. Your company, your pride, your perfect kids, Liam and Sophie. I was just the accident, right?" His face softened, just a fraction, and he ran a hand through his graying hair. "Nora, I didn't mean it like that. It was a joke. You're too damn sensitive." I stepped forward, my voice rising. "A joke? You humiliated me in front of half the town. You've been doing it my whole life, dismissing my art, my job, me. I'm done being your punchline." He stared at me, like he was seeing me for the first time, and I saw the cracks in his armor. His company was his identity, his proof he was more than a small-town guy, and I'd shaken it. "You're not innocent in this," he said finally, his voice quieter. "You went after my business. That's low, Nora." Guilt twisted in my gut, but I held his gaze. "Maybe, but you made it easy." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Sophie again. I ignored it, but Dad noticed, his eyes narrowing. "Your sister's worried sick. You're tearing this family apart." I shook my head, my throat tight. "No, Dad. You did that when you made me feel like I didn't belong." He opened his mouth, then closed it, his shoulders slumping. For a moment I thought he might apologize, but he just turned and walked away, his boots echoing in the quiet. I shut the door, my hands shaking, and slid to the floor. I'd stood my ground, but why did it feel like I'd lost something? Sophie's call came an hour later, her voice trembling through the speaker. "Nora, why are you doing this? Dad's a mess and Mom's freaking out. Can't we just talk?" I paced my apartment, the hardwood creaking under my feet. Sophie sounded different. Not just the golden child defending Dad, but scared, caught between us. "You laughed, Sophie," I said, my voice raw. "When he called me a mistake, you laughed." She went quiet, then whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't think it was a big deal." Her words stung, but there was a crack in her usual confidence, like she was starting to see the weight of it all. "It was to me," I said and hung up, my heart heavy. Sophie wasn't the enemy, but she wasn't my ally either, not yet. I grabbed my sketchbook, flipping to my lighthouse drawing, its beam cutting through a storm. I sketched furiously, the pencil digging into the paper. I wasn't just angry, I was done shrinking to fit their version of me. But Dad's fear, Sophie's plea, they were cracks in the family I thought I understood. Could I keep pushing, knowing it might break us for good? I didn't have answers, but as I drew, I felt a spark of something new. Resolve, sharp and unyielding, like the rocks on Cape Elizabeth shore. The next week, I threw myself into work, my designs for a local brewery campaign earning praise from my boss. "This is next level, Nora," she'd said, and I felt a rush of pride I hadn't let myself feel in years. Art wasn't just my escape anymore, it was my power. On Saturday, Evan invited me to a community art fair in Portland's Old Port, a maze of cobblestone streets and brick warehouses buzzing with locals and tourists. I hesitated, still raw from Dad's visit, but Maya's voice echoed in my head. "Burn it down." I needed to get out, to remind myself I was more than the Bennett's mistake. The fair was alive with color, booths draped in fairy lights, artists hawking paintings of lighthouses and lobster boats. I wandered, my portfolio under my arm, feeling out of place among the confident creators. Evan found me near a stall selling sea glass jewelry, his flannel swapped for a navy sweater that made his eyes look warmer. "Thought you might bail," he teased, handing me a hot cider. I smiled, the warmth of the cup grounding me. "Almost did," I admitted. "Family stuff's been heavy." He nodded, his gaze steady. "Want to tell me about it? No pressure." We walked along the harbor, the air sharp with salt and fish. I told him about Dad's confrontation, Sophie's call, the guilt and anger tangled inside me. Evan listened, his hands in his pockets, the waves lapping below us. When I finished, he stopped, looking out at the water. "My dad wasn't much different," he said quietly. "Always wanted me to take over his fishing boat, not open a cafe, called me a dreamer, like it was a bad thing." I stared at him, surprised. Evan, with his easy smile and steady presence, had fought his own battles. "How'd you get past it?" I asked. He shrugged, a half-smile tugging at his lips. "Stopped trying to be what he wanted. Started building my own life. You're doing that, Nora, whether you see it or not." His words hit deep, and I felt a warmth that wasn't just the cider. As we walked back to the fair, a gallery owner stopped me, eyeing my portfolio. "These are striking," she said, flipping through my sketches. "We're looking for local artists for a showcase. You in?" My heart leapt, but I hesitated, Dad's voice creeping in. "Not a real career." Evan nudged me. "Say yes, Nora." I did, my voice shaky but sure. Back at my apartment, Maya texted, her excitement jumping off the screen. "Found more dirt on your dad's company, unpaid subcontractors, shoddy materials. Want me to push it?" I stared at the message, my pulse racing. The art fair had lit something in me, a belief in my own worth, but pushing harder against Dad felt like crossing a line. I thought of Evan's story, his quiet strength, and typed back, "Send it to your friend. Let's see what happens." I hit send, my hands trembling. I wasn't just fighting Dad anymore. I was fighting for me. The showcase invitation sat on my desk, next to Grace's stone. I sketched late into the night, my lighthouse now a beacon in a calmer sea. But the calm didn't last. By Monday, the local paper ran a story on Bennett Construction's questionable practices, citing Maya's evidence. Dad's text exploded. "You're destroying everything, Nora." Liam's were colder. "You've gone too far." Even Sophie chimed in, her voice breaking in a voicemail. "I don't know why you're doing this, but it's hurting us all." Her pain caught me off guard, a reminder she wasn't just Dad's golden child. She was my sister, stuck in the middle of this mess. I met Evan at his cafe, the smell of coffee and scones a small comfort. "Heard about your dad's company," he said, sliding me a latte. "You okay?" I shrugged, staring at the foam. "I don't know. I wanted him to feel what I felt, but now it's messy." He leaned forward, his voice soft. "You're not the bad guy here, Nora. But maybe it's time to figure out what you want, not just what'll hurt him." His words echoed Grace's, and I nodded, my resolve shifting. I wasn't done, but I needed to be smart, not just angry. As I left, the harbor sparkled under the sun, a promise of something new, if I could find the courage to chase it. The salty tang of the Atlantic hung heavy in the air as I sat on my apartment's fire escape, the Portland skyline a jagged silhouette against the dusk. 3 weeks had passed since I'd sent Maya's journalist friend more dirt on Dad's company, and the fallout was everywhere. Local blogs buzzed with whispers of Bennett Construction's troubles, delayed projects, unpaid subcontractors, clients pulling out. Cape Elizabeth's gossip mill churned, and I could feel the weight of it, even 30 miles away. My phone was a war zone, Dad's texts, sharp with blame, Liam's cold accusations, Sophie's pleas, each one softer but heavier. I'd wanted Dad to feel my pain, but now, with the chaos spreading, I wondered if I'd lit a fire I couldn't control. I clutched my sketchbook, its pages filled with lighthouses and stormy seas, my refuge when words failed. The art fair last week had been a high, my designs catching a gallery owner's eye, a chance at a showcase. But Dad's confrontation, Sophie's tearful voicemail, they clawed at me. Was I tearing my family apart, or was I finally standing up? My phone buzzed again, a group text from Liam. "Family meeting tonight at Mom and Dad's." "You should be there, Nora." I stared at it, my stomach twisting. A meeting without me? Were they circling the wagons, painting me as the villain? I didn't reply, but the message burned. They were closing ranks, and I was on the outside. I headed to the beach near Two Lights State Park, needing the ocean's rhythm to clear my head. The tide was out, leaving pools of seaweed and shells glinting in the fading light. Grace Sullivan was there, her canvas bag slung over her shoulder, collecting driftwood like always. She spotted me, her eyes crinkling. "Nora, you look like you're wrestling a storm," she said, her voice warm but piercing. I managed a weak smile, kicking at a pebble. "Feels like it. My family's having a meeting tonight. Without me, guess I'm the bad guy now." Grace sat on a driftwood log, patting the spot beside her. I sat, the wood rough under my jeans. "You're not the bad guy," she said, "but you're shaking things up. That scares people." She pulled a shell from her bag, its edges worn smooth. "My father hated when I stood up to him, said I was ungrateful, but sometimes shaking things up is the only way to be seen." I took the shell, its cool weight grounding me. "I leaked stuff about Dad's company," I admitted, my voice low. "Permits, subcontractors, it's hitting him hard, and now I don't know if I went too far." Grace's gaze was steady, not judging. "You're fighting for your place, Nora, but ask yourself, what do you want this fight to mean? Revenge or something bigger?" Her words hit like a wave, steady and clear. I wanted Dad to see me, to feel the hurt he'd caused. But what came after? I thought of my sketches, the showcase, the life I was building. "I want to be free," I said finally. "Free from feeling like I'm not enough." Grace nodded, handing me another shell. "Then keep going, but fight smart, not just angry." Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop, the local paper's headline glaring. "Bennett Construction faces client backlash over delays." My tip had snowballed. A major client had pulled out, citing trust issues. Guilt gnawed at me, but so did a flicker of power. Dad's empire wasn't untouchable, and I'd proved it. My phone buzzed. Sophie again. "Nora, please come tonight. We need you." Her words were softer, almost desperate, and I pictured her at Mom and Dad's, caught between her loyalty to them and the sister she'd laughed off. I didn't reply, but her plea stuck, a crack in the wall between us. I grabbed my sketchbook, sketching a new lighthouse, its beam steady despite the storm. Grace's question echoed. What did I want? I wasn't sure, but I knew I couldn't go back to being invisible. At work the next day, Maya burst in, her eyes gleaming. "Your dad's company is trending on the local subreddit," she said, pulling up her phone. "People are pissed. Contractors, clients, even some employees." I swallowed, my throat tight. "Did I do this?" I asked, half to myself. Maya grinned, fierce. "You started it. He built the mess." Her confidence was infectious, but doubt lingered. Was I becoming someone I didn't recognize? That evening, I walked to Carter's Cafe, the bell jingling as I stepped into the warmth of coffee and cinnamon. Evan was wiping down tables, his smile fading when he saw my face. "You look like you need more than coffee," he said, sliding a mug my way. I slumped onto a stool, the harbor lights twinkling outside. "My family's meeting without me," I said, my voice low. "They think I'm the problem, and maybe I am." Evan leaned on the counter, his eyes steady. "You're not. You're just done taking their crap. That's not the same thing." His words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. I sketched in the cafe, the lighthouse taking shape, its storm calmer now. Evan sat beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "You're good, Nora," he said, nodding at my drawing. "Not just at this, at fighting for yourself." I looked at him, his warmth cutting through my doubt. Was this what it felt like to be seen? I wanted to lean into it, but fear held me back. What if I let him in and got hurt again? As I left, the harbor breeze carried a promise of change, but the family meeting loomed, a shadow I couldn't shake. The next morning, my phone lit up with a text from Mom. Not a call, not a voicemail, but a letter, slipped under my apartment door overnight. I unfolded it, the paper trembling in my hands. "Nora, I know you're hurting." It began, her neat handwriting a contrast to the chaos. "Your father didn't mean to upset you. He's under so much pressure with the business, and we all want you back. I'm sorry if we made you feel small." My eyes stung. But anger flared hotter. Sorry if. She was still defending Dad, still smoothing things over like she always did. But her words held a flicker of guilt, a crack in her usual calm. I sat at my desk, staring at the letter, and grabbed a pen. I wrote back, not to send, but to get it out. Mom, you let him call me a mistake. You smiled. I've spent my life trying to be enough for you, for Dad, and it's never worked. The words poured out, raw and jagged, filling 2 pages. I didn't send it, but writing it felt like breathing again. My phone buzzed. Maya, with a link to a new article. Bennett construction under fire permit issues escalate. My tip had grown legs, naming me as a concerned source. My heart sank. I'd wanted Dad to feel my pain, not to be exposed like this. I headed to Carter's cafe, needing Evan's steady presence. He was steaming milk, the hiss of the machine cutting through the morning quiet. You saw the article? He asked, not looking up. I nodded, my throat tight. Didn't mean for it to go this far, I said, sinking onto a stool. He slid me a latte, his hand brushing mine. You stood up for yourself, Nora. That's not nothing. His eyes held mine, warm and sure, and my breath caught. I like you, he said suddenly, his voice low. Not just as a friend, I've liked you for a while. My heart raced, a mix of fear and want. I wanted to say it back, to let myself feel it, but the weight of my family, the article, held me back. Evan, I can't right now, I said, my voice breaking. He nodded, not pushing, but his smile was soft, like he'd wait. I left the cafe, the harbor sparkling under a rare clear sky. The article was out there, my name tied to it, and my family was fracturing. Sophie's latest text hit hard. Nora, I get why you're mad, but this is breaking us. Please talk to me. Her words weren't accusing. They were raw, like she was finally seeing me. I didn't reply, but I clutched my sketchbook, the lighthouse now a beacon in a clearing storm. I needed to face them, not for their sake, but for mine. That night, I walked the Portland waterfront, the cobblestones cool under my sneakers. The article had shifted something. Dad's business was teetering, and I was the spark, but Grace's words echoed. What do you want this fight to mean? I wanted freedom, not destruction. I thought of Evan's confession, Sophie's plea, Mom's letter. They were all tangled in this mess, and I was the one who'd have to decide what came next. I stopped by the water, the harbor lights reflecting like stars. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready to fight, not just against them, but for the Nora I was becoming. The salty breeze off the Atlantic swirled around me as I stepped into the Rusty Anchor, a weathered diner on Cape Elizabeth's main drag, its neon sign flickering in the dusk. It was a month since I'd walked out of Sophie's engagement party, and the air felt heavy with everything that had happened. Dad's cruel toast, my leaked tip about his company, the fractured family I'd left behind. Tonight they'd invited me to talk, calling it a chance to fix things. My stomach churned as I pushed open the door, the bell jingling over the hum of locals and the clatter of plates. I wasn't here to beg for their approval. I was Nora Bennett, and I was here to be seen. Inside, the diner smelled of fried clams and coffee, its red vinyl booths packed with familiar faces. Mom, Dad, Liam, and Sophie sat at a corner table, their expressions a mix of tension and hope. Mom's eyes were soft, her hands twisting a napkin. Dad's jaw was tight, his flannel shirt neater than when he'd shown up at my apartment. Liam, in his lawyer suit, looked impatient, while Sophie's smile was hesitant, her engagement ring catching the light. I slid into the booth, my sketchbook tucked under my arm like a shield. Thanks for coming, Nora, Mom said, her voice shaky. I nodded, my throat tight, waiting for what came next. Dad cleared his throat, his hands clasped on the table. Nora, we've been a mess, he said, his voice lower than I expected. The business, it's taking a hit. Clients are gone. Rumors are everywhere. His eyes met mine, and I saw something new. Vulnerability, not just anger. I know you had a hand in it, and I know I hurt you at the party. I didn't mean to make you feel less. My chest tightened, his words a crack in the wall he'd built between us. Was this an apology? I wanted to believe it, but years of his jabs, oops baby, not a real career, held me back. I took a breath, my voice steady. You didn't just hurt me that night, Dad. You've been doing it my whole life. Every time you dismissed my art, my job, me, you made me feel like I wasn't enough, and everyone laughed along. The table went quiet, the diner's chatter fading. Sophie's eyes dropped, her fingers fidgeting. Liam shifted, his face tight, but he didn't interrupt. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled back. Mom, you smiled when he said it. You let it happen. And Sophie, Liam, you both laughed. I felt like I didn't belong in my own family. Sophie's voice broke in, soft but raw. I didn't mean to hurt you, Nora. I was caught up in the moment, my engagement. I didn't see how it hit you. Her eyes were wet, and I saw the sister who used to braid my hair, not just the golden child. Liam cleared his throat, his voice quieter than usual. I didn't get it either. I've been so focused on being what Dad wanted. I didn't see what it did to you. His admission stunned me. Liam, the perfect son, admitting he felt trapped too? I nodded, my anger softening but not gone. Dad leaned forward, his hands trembling slightly. I was wrong, Nora. I've been so caught up in the business and proving myself. I didn't see what I was doing to you. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to be better. His words were earnest, but they weren't enough to erase the years. I thought of Grace's stone on my desk, her advice to fight for myself, not just against them. I hear you, Dad, I said, my voice firm. But I can't keep living for your approval. I'm done being the mistake. I need space, boundaries to be me. Nora, not your oops baby. Mom's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. We want you in our lives, Nora. We'll try harder. Sophie reached out, her hand brushing mine. I'm sorry, Nora. I want my sister back. Liam gave a small nod, his usual confidence gone. I felt a flicker of hope, but I wasn't ready to dive back in. I need time, I said, standing, but I'm not closing the door. I walked out, the diner's bell ringing behind me, the ocean air cool against my face. They'd heard me, maybe for the first time, but I wasn't theirs to fix. I was mine. Back in Portland, my life was taking shape. The gallery showcase had gone better than I'd dreamed. My lighthouse design sold out, and I'd landed a contract with a local brewery. My boss called my work visionary, and I felt a pride I'd never let myself feel before. Art wasn't just a hobby. It was my strength, my truth. I thought of Evan, his quiet confession at the cafe, the way he saw me when I felt invisible. Last week I'd met him at the harbor, the water sparkling under the stars. I meant what I said, he'd told me, his voice soft. I'm here, Nora, whenever you're ready. I'd smiled, my heart opening just a crack. I'm getting there, I'd said, and we'd walked along the cobblestones, his shoulder brushing mine. It wasn't love yet, but it was possibility, something I hadn't let myself believe in before. Now, as I stood on my apartment's fire escape, the city humming below, I felt a quiet strength. Grace's words echoed, fight for something bigger. I was fighting for me, my art, my life, my worth. Dad's business was limping along, but it wasn't my burden. Sophie and Liam were trying, Mom too, but I didn't need their approval to shine. I opened my sketchbook, the lighthouse complete, its beams steady in a calm sea. The storm was over, not because my family had fixed it, but because I'd chosen myself. I'd set boundaries, not walls, leaving room for them to change, but not waiting for it. The Portland skyline glowed, and I felt like I was seeing it for the first time. I wasn't the oops baby anymore. I was Nora Bennett, artist, fighter, free. And that was enough. I hope you enjoyed this story. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss touching stories. Leave a like and then comment below what you thought of the emotional stories. See you in the next video.